Short,
Yeah,
yes.
So
yes.
if you can please introduce yourself.
Yes.
At the beginning.
Or I can take that off if you want.
No, I don't mind, but this has a little bit turned, so.
That's
It won't
pink.
capture anything.
Yeah, but that indicates I'm retired.
Yeah, if you can introduce
Okay,
yourself.
yeah.
And then you just look at me when
Yeah.
you talk, and
Yeah.
You don't look at the camera.
Okay. We ready? This is okay. Good afternoon. My name's Gillian Allard. I've been working with FAO from 1997 to 2013. I'm now retired. My position here for 17 years was as the Forest Protection and Health Officer, working in the Forestry Department. Obviously, no, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah. It's been no, it's wrong. I can't do this.
Okay, I'll ask you.
Yeah, I think it's
what was
because I wouldn't speak like that. You see,
what did you do in these last 2 days, and why do you think this exercise was somehow relevant to you or important?
Forest pests are extraordinarily important globally, but they're very much ignored in all aspects of plant protection. People concentrate more on agricultural pests. Forestry pests are really, really important. This is not working. This is not how I speak.
Okay.
This is
On forestry and how you think. I don't know if you have any expectations from this evaluation to change something or to say something about forestry.
Yeah.
Or just how do you feel about pests, forestry pests? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
You don't think of this because
no. It's because of it. It's not this. It's not the camera. It's not you. It's just that that's why I didn't do this yesterday, because I'm still very unsure how this is going. So
I think I really understand you, because this is also difficult in my job.
Yeah.
Because I get into these programs or
Yeah.
events which are so complex.
Yeah, and you think,
they look at so many different things.
Yeah.
I need to try to extract.
You have to focus in. Yeah.
I need to try to extract the main messages to try to explain.
Yeah.
Because my main ambition is to try to bring to the broader community what are we doing. To try to explain what is our work. Because people don't know about anchors, for instance.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Yeah.
Only the close practitioners.
Yeah.
So I am trying in a way to bring this to a broader public in a way. I mean, it's still practitioners.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
still people interested, but it's a bit wider. So I know the difficulty in trying to make a simple message out of such a huge.
It's huge. And it's Okay, if we just.
If you think, like when you explain to someone that doesn't know.
Yeah. Well, this is what I was thinking.
Ignorant,
Yeah.
I mean, it's very,
You're learning lots today. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, we're ready. Let's just try, and if it aborts, then I'll just forget it, because I don't think it really makes much difference whether you video me or not. So in those terms. But anyway, we start?
Sure.
Yeah. So my name is Gillian Allard. For the last 17 years, from 1997 till 2013, I was working here in FAO with the forest protection, so forest protection and health. In the my first years up to 2002, I had the global responsibility as one person working on forest fire, insects and diseases, invasive species, climate change, and pollution relating to the health of the world's forest. No other CG centre nor UN agency has any involvement whatsoever in global forest protection. It was a huge task, and it was, for one person, was very, very difficult. But in 1998, there were some very severe fires in Indonesia. They called it the year the world caught fire. Very, very bad, and it got to the stage where many of the Asian countries were suffering from the pollution. WHO were involved and everything, and it was decided that the post had to be split. So in 2002, then I was able to concentrate more on just forest protection and invasive species, which is a really large program because things were getting really, really progressively complicated. So even in 1997, I came in from Africa. I'd been working there with another organization called CABI, working on biological control of cypress aphid, an insect that arrived into Africa in 1996 and within 13 years had moved through almost every country in East and Central Africa, transboundary, which is what Empress is all about. But when I actually arrived into FAO, my first project I had, which was an emergency TCP, I was asked to go to Bulgaria because they had a massive outbreak of a really serious problem with gypsy moth, which is something that they have a lot in the northern United States, which affects broadleaves, mainly oak trees. And the reason for this massive outbreak was because the Soviet Union had just been dismantled or collapsed. And previously, they'd been doing all of the aerial applications to manage these pests. So the countries were left without they had the capacity to do it, the resources, but they didn't have the funds nor the wherewithal and had been used to having a program sorted for them. So a lot of the work done initially was in collaboration with the US Forest Service as partners who do lots of work with aerial application of biological pesticides. Ordinary pesticides are not allowed on forestry, but biological pesticides with controlled application technology, making sure that your actual target is there. So they assisted FAO as a partnership, and that partnership then continued all the way through, not just in that particular aspect of technology, but right the way through to the end, to 2013. They're still collaborating, as are many, many other partners outside of FAO. If you remember, I said originally that I was working alone, so there was no technical support within house, except for a good collaboration with Plant Protection Division, except, again, they worked with the locust program under Empress, and also with their own plant protection program. You've interviewed Nick van der Graaf. I knew him very well, but we never actually worked together because the way that you deal with forest pests is different from the way you work with agriculture. And I know this specifically because I have worked with agriculture pests in Africa, I have worked with sugarcane, I have worked with agroforestry, and I have also worked with forestry. I'm predominantly an entomologist. But with the role that I took on, I had to learn everything. I also can do pathology and work with invasive species. So there was a need to do everything, basically. So anyway, if we go back to the Bulgaria scenario, that's when we started to realize that there were so many emergencies. So emergencies were repeated in that part of Europe, Eastern Europe, in Moldova, the Republic of Moldova, in Slovakia. All sorts of outbreaks, all sorts of problems were starting up, not just in Africa, not just in Asia, but there. And there was a preponderance of TCP activities, which were predominantly emergency TCPs. And this was very important because an emergency TCP means that you get a great deal of support by what was then TCOE. I'm not sure what they call now, but they would give immediate response, and then the country would get assistance. But within that package of assistance, we would always give the predominant, first of all, the management, or if it was a question that we don't know what the problem was, then we would do the surveillance and the monitoring and identifications if it's necessary for some of the newly emerging insects and diseases that were being found. But then at the end of all of it, you would always, or as part of the program, you would always have medium-term strategies for forest health protection and long-term strategies. And this would also include a training program. And so many of these things come under the pillars of Empress. Even though we were never directly involved with Empress, we followed the same model, because in my field it's called integrated pest management, and this is exactly what we were doing. So you don't just have one particular thing that you are doing to manage a pest. In forestry, you have to see all. It's a bit different from agriculture. An agriculture crop could last for a few weeks or a few months or maybe 2 years. A tree can last for 100 years. And so your management strategy has to take into account all of the health of the tree right from the very beginning. The tree profile has to be worked out, the soils, anything, the whole gamut of everything that could be the reason that there is a pest outbreak. So it becomes a little bit more complex than agriculture. I'm not saying that it's not complex in agriculture, but it is a different approach. And of course, the locust program, as you've been talking about with the Empress, has to have a certain, they are literally, and it was said this morning, they are chasing their problems. In forestry, a lot of times you don't see anything until it's too late. So we would get many requests from many, many countries. I did in excess of 30 projects, TCP projects, which were related to forest health issues. Initially, it was always emergencies. So they were always classified as emergency until 2010, when it was no longer permitted to put anything with IPM as an emergency project, which IPM, the integrated pest management, which are really the pillars of Empress. And it was decided that, I don't know whether this still exists, but they couldn't be classified because they said it wasn't an emergency if you could actually put this IPM, the integrated pest management measures, into it. So emergency was a massive intervention and not the long-term strategy. So it became a little bit more complex to work with TCPs. But TCO or TC have been very supportive. There was been very minimum normative funding for any of this work on forest protection. Forest protection, unlike agriculture or unlike forest fires, don't have much public attention until it's too late. And the public attention that we would get would be when it was too late, seriously too late, that the trees were all starting to die, and you'd have a prime minister or a minister or somebody very senior would approach the DG and say, we have a really serious problem. And then we would do the intervention and the projects to try and give support. And the number of countries that I've been involved in or traveled to is about 84 with the FAO. So many, many activities, many serious problems, huge outbreaks, and many of them transboundary. So it got to the stage where we had to, because of just again being one person working with partnerships with people, you had to actually try and see what the major problem was. And the major problem was that we had to start to do more prevention and more awareness of what the problems are, so that it's not just too late. And a lot of there was a change of policy within the regulations of the International Plant Protection Convention, IPPC, and this was the first advent of ISPM number 15, which for the very first time, international standards of phytosanitary measures, number 15 was aimed entirely at forest pests. It was a movement of pests globally in wooden packing materials. And this was a very, very important event. And this then made everyone aware that there are movements of pests all the way around the world, which are carried in wooden packaging materials, in commodities. And so an action started to be taken that way. And so I've been working with the IPPC, with all the member countries, and we produced a guide to the implementation of phytosanitary standards in forestry, because the regulations that we talked about, regulation number 15, ISPM 15, it's a regulatory, so it can't be interpreted. And a lot of the people in the forestry sector were unaware of the language of phytosanitary. They were unaware of the language of actually terms that are used in forestry in different countries. So we had a huge group of people. We started off with 15 people from different countries, with half of them with the English as the first language, half of them with the English as the second language or third, to make sure that everything was understandable, because a lot of terminology is different. So for example, they don't use the word log in Russian, they use the word lumber in North America, and these are unknown terms if you try and translate them. So this was done carefully. Then it was actually taken out to all the countries and actually tested to make sure it was understood, then reviewed by people from more than 40 countries, from all the global areas, and we've produced this guide now. And from the guide, we've done e-learning training materials, which are available in multiple languages again. And the idea of this is to, because if you have a healthy forest, a well-managed forest is a healthy forest. So it's good forest management practices, and then the other one is trade in forest commodities. Because as the trade has increased, travel has increased, the time to travel, more and more people and more events are happening where people are bringing insects and diseases with them through trade, commodities, in people's pockets, everything. And they come into a country and it's a new country, the climate is changing. Previously, they may not have been able to have adapted to that country. They can now do this. They find a new host species and they have no way of controlling it. With natural enemies, it's other insects, for example, to control the one that's already there. But so you can imagine the complexity is very strong. So this was our way of doing prevention. Like Empress is supposed to be prevention, this is what we've done, but with minimum funds and minimum people doing it. So, oh, sorry, excuse me. With minimum people, do you want me to move it? Sorry, I didn't realise I was doing that. Habit. Sorry. So I should just carry on. Yeah. This takes me up to the time when I left. So I've been asked to come this time. It was quite a surprise. It was a very pleasant surprise to be back in FAO. It's a bit like déjà vu when you come back, but to be part of a historical review of Empress has been a little bit complex, because while I know some of the colleagues here, I've never been directly involved with Empress. And when they sent the questions that we were supposed to try and address, and with timelines, because mine has not been just one pest problem, not just locust program, not this. It's been multiples. I mean, I've got lists of all the insects and all the countries and all the outbreaks and all of the, the timings for that. But there's nothing that's discrete. There's nothing that you could actually predict is going to happen. Right now, there's major outbreaks going on. There's new pests moving through the world. The EU tried to change have started to change their regulations. They started to do this in about 2010. And it actually is to try and include forestry pests. Again, as I said, you have to deal with the forestry pest in a different way from an agricultural pest. Whereas the regulations before for the European Union were all for agriculture, but so many problems and a transboundary across the Union, and all sorts of things. Like at the moment we have the elm disease. Have you heard about that one? No. Anyway, there's lots of problems. I won't say all the names of the diseases and the insects that are there, but there's lots of movements. And they can come through the European, they now have what they call plant passports, so that you know the origin of a plant through the European Union. Anyway, there's lots of actions there that people are now becoming aware that forest pests have to be treated in such a way. No longer a low priority, they have to be prioritized. So I was very pleased to come to Empress to have the chance to actually emphasize how important forest pests are, but have previously not been included in Empress. And we're hoping, big hope for the future prognosis is that if Empress stays as it is, working with discrete projects, that at the same time they would have perhaps a little pot for emergencies. So if there are unknown new pests in forestry, in fisheries, in plant protection, in agriculture, then we can see if there is a chance to actually be able to assist the country. So I leave with the positive hope, I think so, but it's been an interesting 2 days. It's been a chance to talk a lot. I mean, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the results are and hoping that Empress goes forward. I will say one thing, that the people that I work with have never heard of Empress outside in all the countries. I had no reason to actually emphasize Empress when I was traveling, because unless the countries were working with locusts or a little bit with plant protection, agriculture, there are certain projects or certain problems in agriculture, pest, banana, cassava. I've worked with both of those in Africa, and those are very clear, but the people I was working with were in the forestry departments, and they're not aware because they have so much to do themselves. And this is the same for the agriculture sector. If you're working in the agriculture sector, you rarely will go and work in the forest sector, and the other way around as well. So it's a whole complexity of different things.
But how I mean, for you, why would that be important to be included in Empress? How would you benefit? Is that system you're looking for? Because I don't know.
Again, because it's structure. I think it's structure. You remember, I'm no longer working here. My colleague, Shiroma, has taken over from me. She's been working here since 2014. She's facing the same struggles as I had, which was always trying to find funding and find an umbrella to come under. It's very insular. We work very, very much, like I say, a little bit in partnership, massively in partnership with other forest services outside of FAO. Internally, there's no other colleagues to discuss anything with. There is, apart from the plant protection people, of course, they're very busy, and it is different complexities. I mean, leaf rusts are not the same as the Asian longhorn beetle. The IPPC is very, very involved in, but again, they're not at that level of, there's nobody really to discuss things with, you know, how to deal with a new outbreak of an extraordinary problem. And it would be like, right now in Iran, there's a very serious problem. And it started some years back, and a native oak species, which has been there since thousands of years, it is, you know, an indigenous species. It's so vital to them, has a really serious dieback, a disease as well. It's called charcoal disease. And it would be really nice, we have to bring in consultants and everything, but it would be really nice to have a group of people that you could call on. I think that would be nice, but also funding is really important. So once you get funding, you can usually find other people to help you. So to come under an umbrella, you're left alone a lot because nobody really understands the techniques of your project or the technology of it. So that's quite good. That could be off the record, but that's something that's a little bit more complicated. But under Empress, whether it would make it more complicated, I don't know. But I'm not 100% of all these divisions now with the SOs, who comes under what now, because this wasn't in my time, it just started. So I don't actually know where forest protection now comes, which SO it's under, because it's very, very complicated. So maybe that would be clear. I think you would have to ask my colleague Shiroma what she would see for being. Is that enough? Yeah. I think if you could interview her, she's away now until the 6th of December, And what she's actually, because it's not up to me now to make any decisions for the programme, but I do know the complexity she's working under. She's on a 3-country mission at the moment, so she's going from country to country, very short days, and so it's really, I don't know, I think it would be very good to be able to access not just funds, but persons as well, scientists, experts, if that was possible, but that's probably not going to happen. So,
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just off the record, as a curiosity thing, what do you think about like the Committee of Forestry? Would you find a platform there?
The
Committee of Forestry.
you mean COFO? Yeah, you know, this is a problem. I was just telling the colleague here that COFO it's all the heads of forest protection. I'm sorry, the heads of forestry. So the heads of forestry make the decision about what the forestry department does. And under no time when I've been working in FAO, apart from with forest fire, if they don't mention it during COFO as a priority, it doesn't go down in the programme. So it's, if a country has a really serious problem, then they will mention it. While there's no problem, they don't mention it. There's red, there's all sorts of everything. There's huge, but it's only when it's an emergency that. So this is why we built that programme